Good afternoon, my name is Kirsty Dignam and I'm here to look at the weekly energies with today's Monday's Musings on the 20th of October 2025. And I'm incredibly tempted just to include however long it would be of the bloopers that I have done leading up to this video. The truth of the matter is I have a lot going on at home at the moment. Some beautiful things. I have my husband home from work on a day off, and I also have the addition of two very interesting, lively little characters, two kittens that have come into my home. So there is a lot going on that I am being wonderfully distracted by, but also nurturing. On the less positive side, I also have an incredible infection in my mouth all around the bottom of my teeth, so I find it very difficult to speak. And that feels important, to have the balance between things that bring us joy and pleasure, but also allowing space for things that have potentially stood in the way of that, finding a middle ground between the two. I would like to first and foremost say happy Diwali, however it is you pronounce it, because the truth is I'm not quite sure. And that's okay. It's okay to mention when we're not sure. It's okay to not have all the answers. I have researched how to best pronounce this festival of lights and come up against different opinions. And we may find that this week. We may find that there are different versions, not just with the Festival of Light, but thank you, yes, with light itself. Different versions of light and how that can be celebrated will be varying amongst us all, particularly as we lead into the new moon in Libra. There's going to be a restock, a rebalancing of what it is we need, and that is going to be different for everybody. However, that being said, it will involve polarities. One of the guidances this morning that came through around this almost necessary separation that many are going through is to acknowledge where they may not have found their own path, their own harmony from within. So that being said, the deck that I'm going to use today are Tarot of the New Vision, because that feels important to recognise that that is actually what's coming through, whether it's the Festival of Light and there being an emphasis on that returning, even if it may not feel like it. For some, it has been quite heavy in regards to some of the pain that we haven't expressed, be that physical, emotional or mental pain that has been coming to the surface, so that we can identify where we may need to restore that balance simply by listening. There's no shock that it's quite difficult to talk for me, so I'm having to listen more, and I'm listening more to my body with that, and I'm listening more to underlying imbalances that have been ongoing for some time, particularly in regards to how I have not been moving forward to the level that I believe that I had through integration. One of the things that came through yesterday with the many of you that watch my videos regularly or read blogs that I write, I play on words a lot because that's how a lot of the guidance comes through, to break down the language that we are receiving to make it relevant. One of the ways that that is done in my own system is to play on words, and one of the things I received yesterday was integration into great. That's what's being expected of us now, to take moments where we integrate the things that have changed, and with that we'll recognize perhaps where we haven't. An example, yesterday my husband noticed that I was actually putting off collecting the kittens, much as I'd gone through a huge process of welcoming the idea of animals back into my life. It's been nearly a year's anniversary since the passing of my dog and my cat. I'd gone through a huge process with that, but I was still putting off the inevitable, and it wasn't because I didn't want the kittens, and it wasn't because I wasn't looking forward to them. It was because I was not in a place of receptivity. I was not in a place of being, I was very open for the emotions that had come up, holding space for loss and new beginnings, very open with that, but not allowing the love that wanted to come through. And it was that was stopping me, not moving on. This isn't about moving on. So when we have loss, or when we have change, or when things have shifted in our life, this And those shifts don't have to be big dramatic shifts. I want to point that out this week. They don't have to be huge life-changing shifts. It's about recognizing that every shift is life-changing, because it's important as we go into 2026 that we are aware of the impact on our body of necessary transformations that have occurred and will be occurring. And they may be the ones that we don't even recognize, the very small ones or the more pleasant ones. Having kittens is a beautiful, beautiful thing. However, it has shook me to my core, because I've recognized where I am, the love that I have for my previous animals. I am using that to protect myself against allowing any more in. So why is that important? Well, as we go into the next into 2026, into the next year, although it does feel into up to about 2032 actually, it is about recognizing where we can flip the narrative, where we can actually understand things like grief on a far deeper level, not necessarily just the loss, but what it opens us up to. For those that have experienced deep grief or deep change or deep transformation, you'll be aware of a space in between spaces that you are held, where the world doesn't quite feel very real. Now, it's very similar to depression. It's very similar to having to go within when you're experiencing pain. Yes, transition is very similar to transition. And that is what we're being encouraged to stand in as much as possible within our bodies, without needing so many external opportunities. And that's going to happen more and more when that becomes more normal to us. Transition is a normal state of change. It is completion. It is integration. It is an opportunity to go into things that haven't been tapped into yet, into our more whole self. Only there will we find any new vision. So is there anything else to add on that? Well, only there will we find the light. Only by going into that darkness will we find the light. But again, it's not about, it is about the polarity of light and darkness, but it's about the middle ground that runs through it. They are both light. They are just different densities of light. Whether it's darkness or light, they are shades of light. So it's about acknowledging, whilst they may be separate, they are still part of the greater whole. And that greater whole, that greater completion, is ourself. I follow an incredible artist called Narco, and one of his lyrics, I'll have to try and find the song, I think it's Good Things Coming, but one of his lyrics suggests that he is always part of the darkness, but it's pretty equal to his light. This week it's not about getting rid of the darkness, it's about balance. It's about finding that harmony within us. Now that comes from appreciating the good, but also holding space for the things that may not be as pleasant, recognizing what we need in those moments, not overcomplicating things, maintaining our own standpoint on something. It's not about a stand still, but a standpoint. So if we really are connected to our beliefs and grounded in our vision, whilst we may wobble, it won't knock us out of it. Now, anything this week that knocks us out of what we know is an opportunity to really look at how we perceive our own wisdom. How much do we really know about something? Is it in our cellular core? Has it been learnt? Has it been repeated? Or has it really integrated into our body? Anything else on that? It does feel like there will be more to come with that. That does feel like the individual level, and it will be done at a process and a rate that is right for you, and that feels incredibly important. You cannot force this. We cannot push our way through this. We cannot veneer this. We cannot cover this up. This is going to be related to much deeper imbalances in the system, particularly with our bodies. Anybody that is feeling anything physical come to the surface now, please keep in mind that when we're looking at the energetic bodies, when we're looking at woundings, the physical layer is the last layer. So even though it may feel more intense, it is coming to that last pivotal moment. So as much as you can, hold space for that. And like I say, that does mean not going overboard. That does mean doing the best that you can. Totally recommend reading the 4 agreements, but also the 5 agreements by Don Miguel I can't remember his whole name. I'll put it in the comments. Incredible books, very easy to read, not very long as well, so we all have time for that, but not taking things personally, okay? Asking questions if we're unsure, remaining as authentic as possible with ourselves in particular, doing our best in any given moment. And the fifth agreement, taking things with a pinch of salt, adding lib there obviously, but you know, being open to new information coming in, knowing what we know, but also being open to new information coming in, being skeptical, but also being open as well. Having those polarities within us, we can hold space for it all. I've said it before, I said it a few months ago in some of the videos, we are capable of holding space for it all. We can, like myself with the kittens, I can hold space for the grief that I feel for my other animals whilst embracing the new beginnings of additional family, fur family members. And if anything, when we get into that place where we hold all polarities, they actually support each other. The darkness can support the light can support the darkness. When we have those moments, particularly, we may feel as we go over the next few months a psychic depression, and it's an opportunity to really be in the stillness with our body. There's a huge movement, I don't want to say rising, a huge movement coming within us all that is going to connect us further to the earth, further to our physical selves. Our bodies always have been the Merkaba, if you will, the light body of our soul, but that's going to take on a new level as we recognize that our bodies physically are the tree of life. They are the source of wisdom that we feed from, and they are changing. They are changing, as is the cosmic womb, as is the Christ consciousness, you name it. Why? Because of our awareness of it is changing, and our awareness of ourselves is changing, because awareness is a living entity, consciousness is a living entity, and the more we allow in, the more that grows based on our experiences. But if we don't integrate those experiences, that potential can be stunted, and it's important that that expand. It's important that the awarenesses evolve. So it's important that we find these moments of stillness to integrate. Now, stillness doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sit and meditate. It doesn't mean that you need illness to withdraw. That is an old way, an old patriarchal way of bringing in healing and connection. It doesn't have to be that way. Stillness you can do while you're dancing. Stillness you can do while you're cooking. Stillness is merely presence. Be where you are. There's a new type of, not new, but a remembering healing that is being returned for myself over the last few weeks, and it does involve going into the pain. It does involve being very, very present with what is occurring, and it is taking another level. And I know that there are people out there mentally that are going through that process, and physically going through that process, and emotionally going through that process, and it is demanding another level, but all it's demanding another level of is presence. You can do it. You can hold space for both. Keep breathing, one step in front of the other. Find that balance. So the balance comes this week with the tarot of the new vision. We're going to look into the energies this week and how to best navigate them as always. And as always, it feels important to have a structure. I'm also going to keep the book to one side, because in this deck there are certain things to look out for that aren't the same as the other deck, hence the new vision. And we may find that this week that things are different and we're not quite sure. It's okay to look up. It's okay to seek external guidance. It's okay, you know I talk about the tarot being reflective and how intuition is really important. Life happens and we disconnect from our intuition, and it's okay. It's necessary to seek out information elsewhere, externally. Not our answers, but additional information to what is occurring. We can't always see it all. If we did, we wouldn't have each other. If we did, we wouldn't need each other. If we did, we wouldn't have to interact with each other, because it would just be us with our own answers. No learning happens there when we stick to solely what we know. And that's why we may find ourselves wobbling with that this week. We may find ourselves wobbling with what we think we know, because it is a wonderful opportunity to seek more information. Now, that doesn't mean it has to change who we are. Sometimes it may need to, but it doesn't mean necessarily that it has to change who we are. And if you're feeling threatened by seeking new information, how flexible is the wisdom that you've got? How expansive is the wisdom that you've got? How structured and rigid is the wisdom that you've got? Okay. Energies this week and how to best navigate them. We do have the Three of Wands at the bottom of the pack, but I had that left over from the daily guidance. Now, whilst information can still be relevant, this week we're being encouraged to give it a little shuffle, to shake the water up a little bit, to see what's underneath the surface. So a lot of the problems with my gums at the moment, it's below the gum line. Yeah, it's underneath the surface. As we go into Scorpio season, dipping our toes isn't really going to get us any different perspectives, and that may be what you want. You may want to stay where things are at the moment, and there's no judgment there, but recognize that. Just like me, my husband calling me out the other day with the kittens, he was 100% right. I was putting off going to collect them, so then the opportunity was to shrug that off, or to recognize, to go beneath the surface of what was going on there. Okay, energies this week and how to best navigate them. There is a fear there. I can feel my throat drying up. There is a fear there. And it is a fear of the Sun card and the Four of Swords. It's a fear of our own light, because that gives us faith, that gives us hope, that gives us connection, that gives us radiance, that gives us a deeper understanding of who we are and where we've come from. And that is what we're being faced. Some of the things that I've been seeing over the last few weeks, definitely been seeing the Lyrans a lot over the last few weeks. For those that don't know what the Lyrans are, for me in particular, it's white lions, but it is a galactic race coming through incredibly clear the last few weeks. There's also been a lot of changes in my own psychic energy, and being aware of that potential has been interesting, to say the least. Now, we don't have to rush with this. We can enjoy the process. If anything, it feels quite important to recognize that if we force or rush, the body is going to shut down. That may be part of your creative process. You may end up burning yourself out so that you can rest and then allow whatever needs to come in. And if that works for you, it works for you. I'm not here to tell anyone how to create. But if it doesn't work for you, if it can be an assault on the senses, if you want something different, this week is the week to start bringing in more fun, more joy, more playing with the potential. How do we do that? Well, it's how we look at something. You know, depression can be incredibly inconvenient in the modern world. However, it can also be an opportunity to go with what we feel. Now, I'm not talking mental health concerns here that need additional support. I'm suggesting if we feel a bit low, okay, so what is that about? With some humour, without the judgment. Now, when I say with humour, I don't mean to take the piss out of yourself unless that's your thing. For me, sometimes that works. What I mean is without the judgment. When I say humour, I mean lighten it up. You cannot come at something with the same energy. You know, whether you call it woohoo or scientific fact, even Einstein said to come at something with the same energy, you're not going to get a different outcome. So if the energy feels heavy, remember it's about restoring balance. So see that Dulux chart of light. If the energy is heavy and dense and you add more heavy, dense energy to that, what's going to happen? You're going to be in the heavy, dense energy. So if it's heavy and dense, bring in some light. I'm not suggesting placate the energy. What I'm suggesting is you look at where things may be out of balance and do the opposite in order to bring that in. This is the Heyoka way that many are going to embrace into next year, the sacred clown. The sacred clown isn't about taking the mickey out of things. It is about acknowledging where things may not be in balance and offering the opportunity of the opposite. That's the power of polarities. That's the power of opposition. That is why we separate things, so that we can look at it, so that we can bring it back into the whole. Okay, so really feeling into it equally. If the energy is really light and a bit scattered and a bit ungrounded, okay, so how can I bring in darker, denser energy? We can bring joy into stillness. Stillness doesn't have to be, the darkness and the stillness and transition doesn't have to be just linked to grief or endings or overwhelm. It can be linked to joy as well. Play with it. this week. Have some fun with it this week. Rest with it this week. Nurture the mind this week by seeing what is going on from a different perspective. So here we have the Four of Swords. And the character is resting, but it's being observed and being rested. And I really feel like there is an external judgment on that. We have the Magician underneath. There is an external judgment on that, or we can feel as if there's an external judgment on that. All these tick boxes to get done and all these things that we need to achieve, and whether or not people may feel like we're lazy or we're procrastinating. Some of the guidance that came through this morning was, is it procrastination or pleasure? There is a time and a place for everything. Okay, so really feeling into where external views and how we have been witnessed when we need to rest has impacted our ability to receive that. It's a basic need to connect to our body. It's a basic need to connect to what's going on for us from a point of view of self-realization before we even try and create something different. What's underneath it all? It is the Magician as we lead into next year. And what I'm being drawn to here, one of the guidances with the New Moon blog, and it is out on Spotify, and it's been written up as well on my website. One of the guidances out there was it authenticity or performance? And that, yeah, as we go into next year, who are we creating these things for? What impact do we want to make? Are we a dancing monkey? Has our mind taken over? Really looking at it, and underneath we have the Eight of Cups, and I want to draw attention to this one that's just poking itself out, which is the Six of Pentacles. Are we brave enough? In this card, he's walking away from fireworks. He's walking away from what looks like a celebration, from what looks like it was once quite beautiful. Are we brave enough to walk away from that and seek something with more substance? Are we brave enough to walk away towards more of a flow here? Underneath we have the Nine of Swords and the Queen of Swords. The Nine of Swords, there in this deck, you can see there is actually a demon on the wall. There is actually a darkness, a mental opportunity here that is saying this isn't enough. This doesn't bring me what I now need. Yes, the past was worth celebrating and it worked back then, but actually what I need now is X, Y, and Z to really face our demons. Now, I don't mean demons just necessarily in the darker sphere of things. I mean daemons, I mean muse, I mean those parts of us that are coming up to the surface now that we can't placate, that we can't think away, that we can't well, pick your poison, right? Work, alcohol, spirituality, anything that's out of balance is an addiction, guys. Sorry, but it is. So if it takes you away from normal everyday life, if it takes up more time than any other aspect in your life, if it is out of balance, looking at where the addictive tendency towards that may be, and it does come from the mind here. Because underneath it all, there is things to be addressed, integrated, and then created with. We can turn our greatest darkness into our greatest strength. We can, you know, it's the whole magician energy, right? It's lead to gold. We can really find the, for want of a better phrase, shit within it all and use it for fertilizer this week. But we have to dig. Well, we don't have to, of course we don't have to, it's entirely up to us, but what I'm seeing in my mind's eye is the sunflower. If we don't get to the seed of it, how are we going to create anything different? How are we going to plant anything different? So energies this week, and then I'm going to call it a wrap, how to best navigate them. Relax, enjoy, connect, feel into, don't sugarcoat. Don't overcompensate, don't overthink. Be with your truth, like it or not, be with your truth. We have the Four of Pentacles at the bottom. Seek out answers seek out information by all means, but find your own answers. Don't hold on to the opinions, and this video included the examples of other people, particularly those that don't work for you right now, because they're causing quite a bit of confusion, not being able to see the wood through the trees. So let's have a look. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday overall. I wanted to use Sunday's card for the energy overall. Sunday's card is the Nine of Cups, or the Nine of Chalices, the Wish card in this deck. Overall, that is what the energy is about. And we have the Knight of Chalice actually for the encompassing energy. So when it comes to the Nine of Cups, when it comes to our wish card, when it comes to what it is we really yearn for, do we trust that enough to lead us forward? Because this character is actually facing the past. Do we trust that enough, or has it changed? Has what we want shifted? It's okay. It's okay for our dreams to transform. It's okay for our desires to take on a different direction. And we may find that, particularly with the new moon in Libra, that our balance has to come from something that we haven't tried now, because it's almost like juggling balls really, really gently and quite low down. Okay, we're comfortable with this. We know how to maintain this harmony. Okay, so what happens when life comes along and chucks you another ball? Yeah, how are we going to juggle those things? How are we going to find that balance within us? It may take seeking something different. We do have two cards that have come back up, and that is the Four of Swords and the Magician, and you saw me shuffle them. So it is about really reconnecting mentally to our own magic here, really connecting to our own creativity and what it is we are connecting to, what it is we are channeling in. Now that goes on quite a deep level, and it does feel as if it's almost linked to the childhood here, and it feels as if it's linked to inner wounds of wanting too much, of being too much, of stepping back and almost seeing everyone else play. Allowing time for that this week is going to be really important. So let's get some structure. Can play be our structure, I wonder? Can pleasure be our structure? When we look at things from that perspective, on the Monday we do have the Eight of Wands, and things are shifting really quite quickly, but it's about recognizing who is helping that movement. In this card it's a divine figure. In this card it's an angelic being that has got hold of an arrow that is allowing things to shift. So what energy is behind it? It doesn't matter if you call it depression. It doesn't matter if you call, well, of course it matters, right? But regardless of the label that we give it, labels are not the whole point of polarity. Polarity is about feeling the different energies so that we can find a middle ground. The labels, particularly on the Monday, can take us away from that. The trying to understand it can take us away from that. We can call it a demon or a daemon. Either way, it's inspiration depending on our own perspective. And if we can get that into our head, if we can get that into our integrated embodiment, if we can really appreciate that for what it is, light being light, different shades of it, our experiences being different shades of who we are, that wholeness, on the Monday things start to shift quite quickly. But we must see what is occurring from a more higher, future, divine perspective. On the Tuesday we have the Knight of Swords, and you can't actually see the Knight of Swords here. All you can see are people almost bowing to this and the baby behind it. A new way of seeing things. But what I am being reminded of, I can't remember the story, but the story where two women argue over a child. I think I'll have to look it up. Argue over a child, and the suggestion is to, obviously I'm not, but the suggestion is to give half of the baby to each woman, and the real mother comes forward and suggests that she doesn't want the baby at all. She'd rather have nothing than hurt what she loves. Feel into that on the Tuesday, where you may, your actions in particular and your mindset may have gone without in order not to hurt the things that you love. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that aggressive. It doesn't have to be that rigid or that structured. Okay, this is a seat that many have sat on for some time. This is a way of being that many have sat on for some time. But the character that actually has the sword is the newborn child, right by its body. If we can allow all of that to be stripped back, particularly from a mental narrative, there's a real potential of a new beginning here. On the Wednesday, so that child has suddenly become a teenager and now has the sword and is charging forward, and it's charging forward actually to the Ten of Cups here. It seems as if it's charging in a completely different direction, and in this card what I love is normally the Knight of Swords is seen as rushing in, particularly again from a mental perspective. However, he's moving away from the house on fire. he's moving away from the war and the conflict. On the Wednesday, whatever it takes, I think, no, Tuesday is the new moon, but Tuesday bringing in a more strict way of seeing things, being open to be flexible for what that means for you, but knowing what you want to move forward with, because on the Wednesday, at all costs, move away from the drama, move away from the things that just cause burnout, that just cause internal conflict. Move towards what's going to bring you joy. On the Thursday, that's what we face, the 10 of Cups. We face an opportunity here to say, for some, it's almost like coming back into the light. So we do have the 5 days of Diwali. And come the 4th day, yeah, really, really bringing back that light. How can we do that? How can we say, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to do about it, this is how I'm going to move forward, and then how do we celebrate that? Well, we celebrate it in every single action. We find that joy. Again, it's not about placating it and putting it there where it isn't. It does feel as if there's some rose-tinted glasses this week potentially to look out for. This is about creating the joy, not accepting external versions of it. Come the Friday, it's a wonderful opportunity to take stock and rest. Okay, so this almost then, for 1 minute, looked like the 5 of Swords. It isn't, it's the 4 of Swords, but for a minute it looked like the 5 of Swords. So really being aware where we're at conflict with rest. Last week I talked about recreation or recreational energy, and how as a society we don't see the importance of that. When we go into the energy of recreation, when we go into that comfort, that rest, that connection, that being with our body, we're less likely to seek it outside. Yes, that does mean it takes a little bit longer because it's a memory that we don't know. We live in such a fast-paced world. We can reach for a painkiller. I have nothing against painkillers. We can reach for alcohol. I have nothing against alcohol, or drugs, or relationships, or spirituality, meditation, whatever. We can reach for these things, but all these things do is bring forward an energy that we know of harmony and balance. Come the Friday, really looking at your view of that. If we could see that as our normal vibration, we would recognize when we're being kicked out of that and be able to restore that harmony better. Unfortunately, we live in a world where that doesn't sell, where that doesn't fit in with the fast-paced narrative, where, you know, unless it's COVID lockdown, that isn't a way of life, that isn't a pace of life. But it is. It doesn't actually mean that what you do is less productive. You're more aligned and therefore more productive. So what am I getting at? Come Friday, recognize that that energy that you feel when you're at peace is you. And hold on to that. Do whatever it takes to recreate that as many times as possible, because in that space, whether it's the brain waves that have slowed down or the body that is more receptive, new information is received, or rather remembrance can be received and integrated. On the Saturday, that's where we really get the shift in energy, the magician. That's where we come full circle to recognizing where we've been creating from, what we've created as a result without the judgment, although the magician is built on a table made of judgment, where we've been creating from, what we've created as a result, and whether or not that still works for us, and whether or not we want to change that. Who are we creating for, particularly in regards to content? On the Sunday, we have the 9 of Cups. Is there anything I want to add to the 9 of Cups here? Yes, there is actually, because what I can see looks so much like me with the 2 blacks, and the yellow. But what I can see here is the feminine is controlling her urges to play with food, is emotionally suppressing herself here, whereas it's the masculine that's having fun. So by the end of the week, look at where our intuition, our psychic energy, our feelings and emotions want to be heard. They do not want to be placated. They do not want to be filled up. They do not want to be witnessing joy rather than part of it. It may not feel that way. It may feel as if we're miserable. It may feel as if we're depressed. It may feel as if we just can't seem to get happy. Well, that's because whatever we've been feeding from, whatever we've been digesting, isn't actually working for us. Come the Sunday, acknowledging that truth, yes, we may find that what we want shifts and changes. Overall, that's where we have the Knight of Cups here. Moving towards the past. A lot of the things that we have been creating collectively have been based on the past. Now, there's no right or wrong with that, but what part of the past are we basing them on? Are we basing them on the trauma? Are we basing them or creating them on our losses? Or can we start to create them on the wisdom and the beauty that we've gained as a result of the past? Only if we decide to integrate it. So, overall, we have one major arcana, which is the Magician. I hear the song, Could It Be Magic Now? I think that's from Take That, isn't it? It is an opportunity to bring in a deeper connection to creativity, connection, intuition, channeling, magic, psychic energy, all of these things, our emotions. They're not just emotions, they're an ocean of potential. And this week we're going to start to feel that, but more importantly, we're going to see where we may have prevented that based on the views that we have of ourselves, of our emotions, of magic itself. Okay, we then have 1, 2, 3 sword cards. So the creativity does come from the energy of the swords here. So even though our mind may feel a bit discombobulated, if we can be at peace with whatever we're thinking, if we can be at peace with whatever narrative is coming up in our mind, if we can let our thoughts lead the way back home to the emotions we may have been repressing, there can be a more mature mindset gained as a result about ourselves, about the situation, about, well, yeah, all of it really. Spirituality, full stop. I've seen a lot of things come up lately about magic, spirituality, religion, and there's a lot of separation there, but not a lot of mastery. Okay, so again, it's going back to that polarity thing. Yes, labels to help us identify things, but bringing it back to the whole as well. We have one wand card. It is about really finding our own divine inspiration this week. The only way we're going to do that is to really step beyond the labels that we've given it, because the labels come from judgments, good and bad, and those judgments come from experiences, good and bad. But what they do is they restrict. The song for the blog this week was Blurred Lines. They can restrict if we're too rigid in our boundaries, our beliefs, all of it, who we are. They restrict the potential that's coming through, none more so than ourselves. So really looking at that this week, really looking at where we may be holding ourselves back, particularly where we believe we may be in alignment, where that has become our alignment, where restriction has become our alignment, where productivity has become our alignment, where, and again, if it is and it works for you, great. If it isn't, get honest, get real, get truthful this week. We then have 3 cup cards. So the emotions do actually match the mindset. And that could be a really difficult pill to swallow, right? So we can feel really low because we are judging our thoughts. We can feel really confused because we are not trusting our emotions. Equally, we can gain clarity by connecting to that intuition. We can be present and aligned mentally with where we are emotionally. That is the potential. And when those two come together, that's where creativity takes on a whole new level. So it's really important to understand where we're at before we do that. With the 3 of Cups, we have the 10 of Cups, the 9 of Cups, and the Knight of Cups. What is happiness? When did we last feel really, really happy without a substance to initiate that? Happiness comes from within, right? Cliche as it sounds, no one or no thing can make you feel happy. It's different for us all. For me personally, happiness is an acceptance of where I'm at in that moment. I might not bloody like it, but it's an acceptance and a truth of where I'm at. And from there, I know what I'm capable of giving and receiving. We then have one pentacle card underneath it all. So again, one connection to our physical body here. And there's a blur with that. There's a blur of holding on to things that have affected us physically, that is now causing confusion. And it's not about having all the answers. It's not about knowing what to fix or heal or get rid of or whatever. It's about being physically with whatever is happening. Awareness itself is an incredibly healing tool. Awareness in itself doesn't need anything else. Awareness is being heard, being felt, being acknowledged, being welcomed, being accepted, and then coming back to the completion that's available. So one card overall this week and how to best, one card overall for this week and how to best navigate the week ahead. Okay, so yeah, there was a lack of clarity there. There was a lack of clarity there, and it feels quite important that if we try and find one answer to it all, we're restricting not only what is going on, but we're restricting what is available to help us with whatever is going on, because it's multifaceted. We're multifaceted. Okay, so the two cards that came, we have the Four of Pentacles again, but the two cards that came out were the Knave of Chalices and the Seven of Wands. There is defensiveness here in how we see ourselves and how we see the world around us, and it's brought a bit of a drought to our imagination. It's brought a bit of a we need something new to come in now. So being open to that. Underneath it all, we have the Moon card. Right. Okay. And Justice and the Chariot. And what I feel is the more I keep searching, this week in particular, the more we keep searching, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will lead to new answers. There's a seek out information by all means, but don't be surprised if you come full circle to what it was you already knew. Be with that. Be with your truth. We have the Chariot and Justice here. The child from the King of Swords is now being nurtured and looked after. Whatever is trying to come through, whatever is trying to be born here, take some time. Be with it as its creator, as its guardian, and ensure that that balance is available enough that whatever process you're going through is as comfortable as possible. Take time. Restore harmony. Recognize you are part of cosmic, karmic law, however you want to look at it, by acknowledging where you're adding to it from. I'm not going to add anything else. It does feel as if there's a lot of doubt this week that's coming to the surface. Be with that. See it. Recognize you don't know it all. I don't know it all. And embrace the information that's trying to come through once we can get out of our own way. Take care. Have the most incredible week. And I'll see you next week.